Welcome. Just giving everyone a couple of minutes to join. Happy Friday. Hello, happy Friday. Thanks for joining.
Oh, it is funny, this bit, isn't it? Waiting. I feel like we should have some intro music or something.
Yeah, I said that last time, but I keep testing it and it doesn't sound great. So
I should have brought an instrument.
yeah.
I'm just going to open with a small song.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining. Just giving everyone, this is that really awkward bit where we're just waiting for people to pop in. While we're waiting, feel free to say hello in the chat box, which is along the bottom if you like. Let us know where you're watching from. Hello from Rainy Holmfirth. Hope is that how you say
it? Ray Hover. Hi, Naz. Not actually raining in Manchester, so it must be headed this way.
Oh, it's raining in Bristol as well, so yeah, it's down south too. Okay, well, thanks for joining. I think we will make a start. Welcome to the Female Founders Series. I will just start by giving you a really quick housekeeping tour if you've never done a Zoom webinar before. So along the bottom, you should have a little Q&A box. If you have any questions as we go through our chat with Abi today, if you just pop them in that Q&A box, just in case I miss them in the chat, and then I'll make sure we grill Abi at the end. There's also just a little chat box if you haven't spotted it already. If you'd like to say hello in there and tell us where you're calling from, then please do. So yeah, thank you for coming. I'll give you a tiny little bit of background. So I'm Glenda and I run Bloom Marketing. I've been a freelance marketing consultant since January this year. And when I was thinking about going self-employed, which I think I have done for many years now, I always had a bit of an itch that I wanted to scratch. I couldn't really find, I guess, what people call their tribe or any like-minded entrepreneurs that just felt normal. And I don't know, on LinkedIn I felt like there was a clash between freelancers who were whinging about not getting paid and then entrepreneurs who were a little bit overzealous with their, this is how I made 43 million pounds last night and this is how you can do it too. And it just, nothing felt quite right for me. And then when I eventually did just decide to go for it, I did start meeting lots of people who I felt ticked my kind of boxes. Some of them you have met already if you've been joining us for these webinars. And another one is Abi, who I was introduced to through another of the female founders. And all of these women just have amazing founder stories, in my opinion, and I'm sure you'd agree, of just challenging moments, really big highs, maybe a few lows. And I just wanted to give them a bit of a platform to share their stories, and hopefully everyone who's here today will take some bits away from it. So if you're thinking about going self-employed or are self-employed already and just need some inspiration or motivation, then hopefully these webinars are for you. And they're completely free to join, obviously. So there's one left next week, which I'll talk about at the end. But it's time to introduce Abi Dunn, who is my guest today. Abi, say hello, tell us who you are, introduce yourself.
I've got two puppies outside that aren't mine, so you might hear them going, they actually look like cats, but they're actual puppies. So you might hear them going mad every time somebody walks into the office. Hi, I'm Abby, and I founded a business called 68 People. We're coming up to our 5-year anniversary in January, so 4.5 years. And yeah, we've been on quite a journey. It was started with just myself, and I think we're just on about 23 people at the moment. So yeah, that sounds quite a lot and quite scary even to me. So, but that,
Is the aim to get 68 people?
no, definitely not. No, if you ask me on a certain day, I'd be like, right, we're done. We don't need any more people. And then obviously some days I'm thinking, oh yeah, let's just take over the world and get offices in New York. But depends on the day.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. And you started 68 People as a mum of 3, which I just is completely nuts, but also kudos to you. I have a little boy and he takes up most of my brain space. So tell us about that. Tell us about the challenges.
Yeah, so when I first set up 60, well, I left employed work because I was kind of one of those. I left a company that I loved dearly, that I'd worked there for a long, long time, and started working in quite a corporate recruitment agency. And even though I'd said at the time I had twin boys who were maybe 2 at the time, and I'd said, look, I have to leave at 5 o'clock. I have to leave, and they'd put meetings in at 5 o'clock or 4:30, and I'd always be the one. This is obviously nearly 10 years ago, so hopefully the world's changed a little bit, but I was always the one who was the last at the nursery, and was having to excuse myself from things, whether that be after work drinks or whether that be meetings. And I just kind of was just spending my life apologizing to everybody, and so luckily at the time I met a chap called Rory, who now runs B Recruitment, and he gave me the opportunity to go freelance under his name, which was quite a big jump, I think, because you kind of went from being employed and having a salary to no salary whatsoever. So I suppose when I look back now, it was quite a brave thing to do. But and I worked with Rory for around 4 years, had another child, and then eventually, I suppose we kind of it came to the point where I wanted something of my own, and yeah, so again, maybe when I'm sometimes when I talk about it, it feels like I'm talking about a different person, because I don't know if I'm that brave anymore. But at the time I thought, yeah, okay, let's just do it. And there's been quite a few moments of let's just do it and see what happens. And I don't think I had it. I certainly didn't have big wads of cash or lots of support from anywhere. It was definitely let's just see what happens and hope for the best. And yeah, I'm very grateful that it all went okay.
Yeah, that must have been so daunting though, especially like going back to when you sort of first went freelance with the twins. That must have been such a moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's so challenging. Whether you're employed or self-employed, both have got challenges, haven't they? If you're employed, you're kind of accountable to somebody else, and you've got those. It's really dependent on how flexible your employer is, and there's lots of different challenges that brings. And certainly when I went self-employed, that flexibility was just incredible. I don't think I took a proper holiday. We'd be on holiday and I'd be taking calls and all the things that people who are self-employed talk about. But certainly if I wanted to finish earlier or start early or take a random day off, that was something that I could do. And I realized quite quickly that actually this was a real motivator of mine, to have that freedom and flexibility that I hadn't had before. And it wasn't really why I did it, but it came as a really nice surprise to go, oh yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can just, I can not work this afternoon.
Oh, nice.
I actually always did, but it's just having it in your mind of, maybe one day I won't.
And how did it fit around the kids? Tell us about mum guilt.
Yeah, God, I certainly always was, even when I went self-employed, was the children. Well, luckily I've got my mum who supported me in terms of childcare, but they were always in nursery and being, and I know people talk about mum guilt, but I kind of look, there's certain things that you don't really have it until I don't think I had it until they could make me feel bad. I didn't feel bad until the kids were able to make me feel bad about it and say, oh, can you not make that? Or why can't you be at that? So that adds a kind of new layer of guilt on. But certainly from the moment that I had the kids, I never felt that my life was finished or that my career was finished. I felt as though I was just starting, really. So it would have been a shame for me to to kind of throw everything into, obviously it's a big deal having children, and I hope they haven't wanted for anything, but I certainly felt as though I still had a lot to offer the world or myself or whatever it was in terms of carving a career out. I still feel that I've not started properly yet.
That really resonates with me. I feel like I've only just kind of found my stride and developed like something that I really want to do. But with a 2-year-old in tow, and you sort of think, I don't know, people write you off a little bit when you have a child, or certainly in my experience, and they're like, oh, they'll be a bit tied up and they won't be able to do this. And I guess self-employment for me is just giving me that flexibility to say, yeah, I do have a child, but I work around
yeah
them.
And I think, like, in most cases women are significantly underestimated, aren't they? And I think that my experience of working mothers, working stepmothers, whatever capacity you are a mother, they certainly, I think that they overcompensate from an employee perspective. And actually, we've got a lot of young mums at 68 people, and they're arguably some of the hardest working people that I've ever met. So I don't see, it's a perception, isn't it, of some employers and maybe men.
I think
in the chat.
Awesome. I think we're safe. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And tell us a little more about 68 People. So when did you feel like going into people and recruitment was what your passion, what you really wanted to do?
Well, I suppose I'll start with going back in time. I'd spent a long time with a business called Inventive Leisure, who operated Revolution bars, and had in total I was with them for about 15 years, and took so much from it and loved everything about the late night bar world, and met so many incredible people. The other puppies, met so many incredible people, and I suppose I accidentally fell into the people part of it. Maybe, if I was truth be told, before I got fired from the operational part of it, but it got to a point where I'd grown up through the business and became a general manager, but didn't particularly enjoy working Saturday nights anymore. I wanted to be out on a Saturday night. And luckily I had a boss at the time who had said, oh, you should get some recruitment experience, and maybe when we're big enough you could come back as a recruitment manager. And I was very lucky, so took his advice, and then lo and behold he came back and took me into his people team as a recruitment manager, and really enjoyed the challenge of working with the ops team. And I think we had quite a progressive attitude. Maybe when I look back at it now, it wasn't quite so much. We had quite a recruiting with quite a certain type of, I think all our general managers at the time, for example, were under 30, and there was quite a niche type of person that we were looking for. I don't know whether it's as diverse as the company would be now, for example, but it was a very enjoyable role, darting around the country, finding people who wanted to spend their life serving vodka and running bars. So it's a very enjoyable part of my career, and it got to a point where that kind of darting around wasn't possible. I went to work for like I said, a big agency, but the people and recruitment part, I just thought I had a flair for it, really, and really truly enjoyed talking to people, understanding people, empathizing with them, supporting them. And I think maybe at the time, certainly by some of the people that I worked with, that I don't know if it's a kindness or the way that my manner was maybe seen as a weakness, because I wasn't quite as direct or quite as bullish or quite as whatever some of those maybe more masculine traits were, but actually when I look back now, the world's changed a bit, and actually everybody's become slightly different types of leaders, and so yeah, certainly from a 68 people perspective, the business has really benefited from those relationships that I built a long time ago by just kind of caring about others, really. So I've been very lucky that I wasn't a dickhead to people many years ago, because now they're all clients, which is nice.
It sounds good. It sounds positive. And tell us about the business now, how it's going, because you recently opened an office in London.
We did, yes. I was joined by a friend of mine, Charlotte Kemp, around coming up for 2 years now. And I suppose London wasn't really on my radar, if I'm honest. It felt a bit too big and scary, and I was very northern. But Charlotte had operated down there, and she wasn't from London, she was from Northampton, but she'd lived down there for a long time. And so she just felt much more comfortable with it, it wasn't quite as overwhelmed by London as I was. And so we started talking about it, and we found that we had clients that we were supporting in the north, but then kind of saying, no, we can't support you in London. It seemed not to make sense for us, really. And we met one candidate who we were trying to find a role for, and ended up kind of saying, actually, we've got 10 or 15 clients that are actually London based, and we work for them in the north. So we just decided London would be a good project, and thank goodness for the team down there. So there's we've got a team of 5 down there now, and we've been really lucky. They've taken to recruitment and the way we do it like ducks to water, and it's very enjoyable going down there. So and it's going well. I think it's certainly been challenging. I think from a recruitment perspective, we're not always on a level playing field. There's quite a lot of, let's say, bad behaviour in the recruitment world, maybe more so in London, and it's perceived as quite a sharky, maybe sector that doesn't necessarily always add value, and that's quite difficult sometimes to influence people and say, actually, this is not how it should be, this, and to hold your nerve in terms of, so if, for example, speed, everything happens at such pace in London, and I'm a big believer that I understand urgency, but I want to do things properly, and that sometimes takes time. But it's going.
London is the pace.
I definitely. I'm been down there 2 days a week, and I definitely feel totally exhausted. It's a different type of 2 days than it would be. I can't really explain it apart from I can feel completely exhausted when I come back and need to kind of sit and rock in a dark room. It just seems so huge.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that. I'm a bit of a country bumpkin myself. And you've done a lot of work on your purpose at 68 People, and values, and that's something that you talk about quite a bit, and you've helped other businesses develop. So why don't you tell us about how you did it for 68 and why you think it's so important?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I was lucky enough to work for a company in terms of Revolution, where the leader of that business, Roy Ellis, had seen the benefit in having purpose and value. So I'd grown up in a business that had that, and I could see the beauty of it, I could see where companies who maybe didn't have that had fallen down. So certainly from a purpose perspective, so our purpose is around revolutionising the industry through people, and I'd like to think that gives everybody a reason to get out of bed in the morning and to come and believe and genuinely know that they're doing more than finding people jobs. Actually finding people jobs is pretty huge, and the influence and impact you can have on somebody's career and therefore life is mega. And I think that we can influence clients, we can influence candidates, and so I think as an industry, therefore, we can help make it a better place to be in. And so it's always been really important to me in terms of the purpose part. The values, I suppose, when we started, what I had seen maybe in other agencies was a very scripted approach to things. So people having lots of systems, lots of processes. This is how you say this is how you deal with this. And I just didn't want a business like that. So the idea of the values, you know, in any business is to kind of create this framework of behaviors or people understanding, actually, I don't need to know exactly what to say, but I know if that I fall in line with that value, then that's okay. And certainly they've taken flight at 68 people. They're I think, like to think if you talk to anybody in the business, for a start, they know what they are, but they're meaningful. We talk about them every week. We talk about them in, you know, kind of one-to-ones, in reviews. We recognize them, reward them. You know, they become kind of just so off the cuff. You can kind of end up, you know, having jokes about them and saying, oh, you know, is that very expert? And, you know, if there ever is a moment where something is going wrong, we can look at those values and say, right, what, rather than trying to, you know, you can use them as a way to say, oh, I'm just not sure that we were total experts there. Experts, one of our values. And so that it just becomes a softer way to have conversations as well, but in a more meaningful way.
Yeah, so something you always come back to.
Yeah, definitely. And they've changed over the years. They've not always, we've outgrown some. We changed one recently. We had one that was, we are not shady. And at the beginning, that was, you know, that meant a lot to us, and it meant a lot to say to people, look, we're not shady. But it felt as though as we grew, that became obvious. So we've amended it at the conferences we've just had this year to "We Are Different," and it sounded also quite negative when I thought about it. So, you know, I think they probably every 18 months to 2 years we'll relook at them. But yeah, I think they often, the team often use the word cult. I wouldn't use that word, but certainly the values, having these values has helped create what I hope is a really good place to work for everybody.
Yeah, great. And like, in terms of the basics then of getting your purpose down on paper or identifying what your values are, can you just give us like a little overview of how to go about it and how to look inwards, I suppose, to pull them out?
Yeah, I suppose it's, if you're a startup business and you're starting from the beginning, obviously it's hypothetical what your values are going to be. You're saying what you want to be. And I suppose that's the way to do it. If you're a startup as a founder, you say, okay, this is how I want the world to perceive me. This is how I want everybody that comes across me to interact or to have that experience. And I think the most important thing about values is that you can actually live to them. There's no point in saying that your value is, I don't know, something to do with kindness, and then you treat people like shit, you know. So you've got to be able to live that, live through them, whoever's interacting with you, whether that's a client, a candidate, you know, somebody, a random person that you meet. It doesn't matter. They've got to have that experience of you. So I think it's slightly different if you're an existing business, because an existing business is you've got a culture already because you exist, so you can look back and say, okay, this is who we are. And I would know that if values have been crafted by I don't know, somebody in the people department or an owner sat in a room together saying, oh, I like this word, it's probably the wrong way to do it. If the values are created by the people that are, you know, living and breathing the business and saying, oh, this is what the kind of experience you would have from us, therefore this can be a value. I think that's really powerful. So I think if you've got an existing business, it's so important to involve as many people in that process as possible. From a purpose perspective, again, we crafted that as a team, but we existed by that point. So the only bit that I think maybe is founder-led, I would say, is probably the vision part, because you know where you want to go. We used something which is a really nice tool for anybody to use who's on this journey. It's called a vivid vision, and there's a chap that, you know, I googled. I read part of his book. I didn't read all of it. I read listened to his TED Talks, and he creates this thing called a vivid vision, and it ends up being like a kind of working document, very visual, you know, lots of nice images in it. And he uses the analogy that if you're building a house, you know, you don't just say to somebody, it looks like this. You kind of got to have a physical image of what you want them to build as a kind of blueprint. And that was a really nice part of mine and Charlotte's journey of creating what we want the business to look like in 3 years' time, and putting it into a beautiful document for people, physical ring-bound document, and showing them, okay, this is what we want to create. And I think that's really helped. And I would advise anybody who's like I say, on this journey, to do something like that.
Yeah, that sounds really powerful. I feel like I need to go away and do mine now.
It's really fun as well, because you could, we've put in there that we want to buy a chateau, so you can have fun with it.
Yeah.
We do want to buy a chateau, but what the most interesting part about doing the vision is we did it 12 months ago, and then we came back to it just recently, and we'd achieved more than we could ever imagine on there. So I think you can often underestimate what you can achieve, or sometimes overestimate it, but it's a really nice exercise to go back and go, bloody hell, I'm not sure about it, whether it's manifesting, but it's certainly it was a nice exercise to go back and say, bloody hell, we've done that, and we've ticked that bit off, that's tweaked slightly, we don't want that anymore. So yeah, I'd highly recommend that. Cameron Herald is called.
Amazing. Give them a Google. And that's an important part of the process, isn't it? To keep coming back to them every so often, and when you feel like they're not working anymore, or like you say, the vision's changed.
Yeah, and I don't think it's whether you've got a team or whether you're on your own, whether you're employed or self-employed. I think having that understanding of where you want to go is really powerful. Even going to an interview for an employer, people want to see people who have got vision, and people who have got who know what they want out of the next few years. And I can't say I've always had that. I've definitely winged a lot of it, but doing this exercise has really helped me focus, and saying, okay, it's helped me focus on what not to do as well. There's a lot of projects that we could get involved in, but actually when you come back to your vision, then you can go, actually no, that'll take us down a random path. I'm a bit of a magpie, so yeah, I can get distracted by shiny things that I think are going to be fun. So having a good vision, it has been very useful.
Oh, glad to hear it keeps you on track.
Yes, it does.
That contributes to a positive culture then, I guess, if you're involving the team in the process of reviewing the values and getting them to contribute. Talk to us about your culture and how you make sure it's a positive one.
How do I make sure it's positive? Well, you'd have to ask everybody. You'd have to ask everybody else. I hope they think it's positive. We certainly get feedback from people on a regular basis, engagement feedback, and like to think it's positive. And it feels positive. It feels as though people are happy to come to work, that it's challenging, that it's everybody, with every individual's got a plan that they're on, and they've got their development path, that we're having really open and transparent conversations about the business and about performance and development. So it feels like the nicest place I've ever worked, for sure. And God, I only hope that everybody feels that. But I think that honesty and transparency plays a part. It's also there's 23 of us, not 23,000 of us. So I suppose arguably if we can't create a great culture with 22 people, we're doing something wrong. But the more I've seen in my own business now, the more I know without a shadow of a doubt that culture comes from the top. And if you've got somebody great in a bigger business, but they're not getting that kind of top-down attitude towards people or development or leadership, then it's very frustrating. It has to, that belief that it's about people, or the belief that especially in hospitality, that has to come from the board level. I'm sure I've had conversations with Vic, who you interviewed last week, and it's whatever those beliefs are in a business, they've got to come from the top, and it can't just be somebody great further down. They won't be able to have the influence that they want to have. They'll end up just leaving.
So interesting, especially from someone who works in a people environment. I just find it so interesting.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because you can meet so many, especially in the people space, so many people who have the right behaviors, attitudes, or whatever that may be, you know, around how people should be led, people should be treated. But yeah, if you've not got that at the very top of the business, it falls on deaf ears, and you know, it's sad to see in some businesses, by the big or small, that people's voices aren't getting, you know, if it's not from a top down, it can be quite frustrating, I imagine, for people within the team.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about self-employment again.
Don't spend your tax.
That's your top tip then. Don't spend your tax.
Obviously, obviously I did that.
Do you have any specific advice for anyone who might be employed at the moment and is thinking of going into self-employment?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can plan, you know, you can plan the shit out of it, can't you? You can plan it for years, and it's never the right time. You know, it's like getting a pet, or I don't know, blowing all the budget on a luxury holiday. I think you've just got to do it. And I'm a big believer that if you do it and you do it in the right way, then the right things will happen. You know, I think certainly when I went from employed from an agency to being freelance, I certainly didn't have any more than, you know, half a month. So I had no savings. I'm not might be shocked to know I'm not really a saver. But I think just doing it and thinking, right, okay, I just need to do the right thing and it'll happen. And yeah, but knowing, I suppose now if I look back, having that vision bit would have been really useful, and knowing, okay, the other thing that I think I've gone through a bit of a journey on is clients, and picking whatever you do, whether it's recruitment or whatever it is picking the client, picking the niche of clients that you want to work with. You know, so for example, you know, great people for us to work with from a recruitment setting is people who are on a journey between maybe 3 sites and maybe up to 20 sites, and they're founder led, or so there's real kind of criteria that we now know, actually these make really good clients for us because they value our services, they need our services, but having that, you know, crafted plan from even as a you know, coming to self-employed on your own, knowing exactly who to go after, I think is probably quite useful advice, because the world seems so huge as to, you know, all business is business. That's not true. Like, completely, yeah, good clients are good clients, and awful clients are awful clients. And I think it can be very easy to get a shitty client, especially if you're on your own, to then go, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore. So understanding that you can say no to people is probably quite a good tip. So, and there's a really nice way to do it. You know, I remember the first time I did it, I was like, look, I just don't think that you know, we're the best person for you right now, but maybe I could suggest this person because of X, Y, and Z. You know, for example, you might want to use this bigger agency or whoever it might be, but definitely saying no to clients when you start out, I think, yeah, would have been good, and get contracts in place. And you need somebody like my mum. My mum did from the day I set up, did all the invoice chasing, and that is a hugely depressing part of being a kind of startup founder, is the chasing invoice, because you're doing it yourself, and it just, you feel like you want a third party to do it because you want the third party to be a bit more badass than you're going to be. So yeah, you need a Mags who can be a bit more badass, because you've got too much fear about losing the client if you push to pay the invoice. Well, I certainly did, but yeah, I had Rottweiler Mags doing the money chasing, which was beneficial. Get yourself a money chaser.
It sounds like your mum's been a great support, Abby, with childcare and helping you out with business.
She has, and she turns 70 this week. So yeah, she's been incredible.
That's so nice. It's nice to have that.
I'm not saying too much because I don't want to end up crying on a on a podcast. And yes, in answer to the question, Max loves the idea of being pimped out. I'm sure she's always trying to get her claws into something else, other projects.
My invoices for me. What's what's the biggest lesson that you've learned since you've been doing this, or since you've been self-employed maybe?
What is the biggest lesson that I've learned? I wrote something down and now I can't see it because it's gone to sleep. But biggest lessons that I have learned, that perception, maybe if something isn't always reality. Like I've been quite, sometimes I perceive something in a certain way, in terms of insights profiles, I've got quite a high yellow energy, and sometimes that can lead to me being quite, if somebody's quite direct with me, or if somebody's maybe quite cold, that's only my perception of them being cold, and actually they're just, in their perception, being direct. And I think in a lot of scenarios, perception is not always reality. I think linked to that is always, if you're going to send a challenging email, or you get something challenging, or sleep on it and not react to it, is probably some good advice. Maybe in my 40s I'm better at that now. It certainly wasn't historically, but yeah, definitely sleeping on things before you do anything. If you can feel yourself angry typing or whatever, then you should never send it. But I always used to write. Now if I feel myself angry typing, I'm writing it, and then I don't send it, and then 90% of the time I come back to it the next day and I go, no way am I sending that. So
I would definitely agree with that advice. It's definitely something that I learned in my 20s. It just doesn't solve the problem.
No, however clever you think you sound in your reply, it just never, it doesn't land. And then I think the team will say that I always bang on about cause and effect. I learned quite early on that everything is my responsibility or my fault, and that sounds a strange thing to say, but if something hasn't gone our way, I've got to look at what I should have done differently. And I think that's been quite powerful for the team, because they can then see, I think they talk about this now a lot. So if a decision doesn't go their way, or if something happens, can be quite frustrating for them, they question what they could have done differently. And that's a real place of power to come from, because your alternative is saying that someone else has done something wrong, or blaming other people, and actually you've got no control over that. And so it's become, I think, quite a powerful philosophy in the business to say that we've got to live a cause. What could we have done differently? Was that person right for that role? Are we trying to fit a square peg into a round hole? Should we have done this? Should we have confirmed that twice, rather than saying it's everybody else's fault? Because I don't think we can ever develop them. We can only develop if we're questioning what we should have done differently. And it's quite nice. That's a nice space to be in as well, because you don't end up slagging people off.
Yeah. Well, I guess that sounds like it might contribute to the culture as well, rather than bitching about the client.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it came from a place of very early doors. We were kind of hearing, if a candidate ghosted us, for example, I would never. Now I would only ever see that as what have we done wrong. Never would I see that as there's something wrong with the candidate. It's a pointless emotion.
Okay, so let's talk about the future. So what's next for you guys? What's in your vision now?
Holiday. We're going on holiday tonight. I think we've got the growth that we see in the business certainly comes from London. We're lucky enough now to have our international division, and we're having some really brilliant meetings about how we can support people with international talent. So Kath Powell, who heads up that, has just been outstanding. She's a real expert in it. And then we're growing our training arm to the business as well, class of 68, and I think we've got so much potential in terms of what we can deliver at different levels. We've got currently got 2 people that work in the division, and we're looking all the time about how we can innovate that, and how best we can support the industry at what level, and what projects we can be involved in, what we should be involved in, maybe what we shouldn't be involved in. But I feel as though there's from 2 divisions that have got real potential and real growth potential. And then obviously London, we're still new to London, we're finding our feet. So it's very exciting as to what happened there. And we've got lots of exciting things happening in the north. I think we've, I think from a brand perspective, people know who we are in Manchester, and, maybe slightly less so in Leeds and Liverpool, but I think we've got the brand has a reputation, and I think I'd love to see that grow further. And, I do love Scotland.
God, yeah, Scotland's gorgeous. Everyone there. I'll come visit you there then.
Okay, and then obviously Wales as well.
Amazing. It sounds really exciting, Abby. And do you have anyone that inspires you to keep going, or something?
I think I don't know if I could say any one person. I think I put obviously maybe I should say like my mum, my kids and husband, but I think, if I'm honest, I think it's quite inbuilt. It's not one person that I look at and go, oh, because of them I'm going to keep going. And if I'm totally honest, I don't look at my kids and think, oh, because of them I'm going to keep going. It's just inbuilt that I want to be successful, and that's not meant to be egotistical. I want for them, I want to see, I want them to be proud, of course. And I don't want to do anything that's shit. If we're going to grow the business, I don't want the perception of any part of it, or I don't want it to be shit. I want to be the best. And that's probably not necessarily because I've got somebody in my ear going, oh, you should do this. Maybe I do need that. Maybe I need like a mentor, but it's just, I don't want to do anything shit. That's a rubbish answer.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I definitely don't want to do anything shit either. And we spoke yesterday about books and podcasts and stuff, and you're like, I've started loads of books.
Yeah, I know. And I do start a lot of books, and I'm sure I should be the kind of person that finishes them, but I start them and either get the synopsis or listen to them. But I think the one that I really enjoyed, and I did read it from start to finish, like genuinely read it, was one called Ego is the Enemy, and really focusing around it was about leadership and why people make certain decisions. And it's like, when you have that thing where people say, put a lens, see everything that's red or see everything that's blue, and suddenly you can just see that. This book then just led me to just see when people have got egos really, and even in conversations or what's kind of behind their reaction is usually something to do with ego. And it's just a really interesting book, because even how you define ego and what it is and how it comes out in leaders and businesses, it's a really interesting read.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's good. I know I'm talking a lot on this, but I definitely shut up more. I just listen. I kind of maybe thought that I've got to get my point in before, or I've got to say something to make me sound clever. And then I've read this book, I'm like, no, I don't. Let people think that I am clever without saying anything. Be more of a mystery. That's what I'm working on.
Yeah, and listening is quite powerful, actually. Annika Wainwright did the first webinar in this series, and she talked a lot, and talks in general a lot, about the power of listening to people and like really listening to what they say, and mostly in the context of the customer. But I think the same applies, to people and feedback and everyone around you and what they're saying and about your business and you.
Yeah, 100%, and especially from everybody. It doesn't, especially from it could be employees, it could be anybody around you, that kind of being present and not being on your phone. Or we did something, so I can't remember who suggested it, but we'd take our phones off the table in meetings, and that just made a difference to how present I could be, because even if it's flashing, or even if it's physically in your in view, that something's going on with it. And it really helped us to be more present in meetings. So yeah, I definitely think that listening is, yeah, I agree with Annika. Powerful stuff.
Amazing. Well, those are all my questions. So I'm opening it up to our lovely attendees, and there's no pressure, because if you can't think of anything right now, but afterwards you think of something that you wish you'd asked, you can connect with Abi or myself on LinkedIn, or you can drop Abi an email. If there are any questions, please fire away.
Just don't ask me about any other books, because I might not have read them all. I might have read the first few chapters and not finished them.
I do have one question that is, I guess, related to like the process of like when you're, oh, here's one. This will probably be that one. After how long, Abi, did you think you had made it? People say 2 years is the norm. Was it this for you?
I don't think that yet. I suppose the bit about when clients start coming to you, that's a nice, or you speak to somebody and they've heard of the brand or whatever. That, so I don't know the timescale of that, but I suppose that when you're not going out and looking for business, there's quite so much, and it starts to come to you, or the repeat business, maybe then it starts to kind of initially in those first 2 years anyway, become a little bit less stressful. Certainly, I didn't do it through any big marketing costs, and I've certainly never done any sales training. It came through other people and referrals initially, and so that is a really nice feeling when people come to you. So the 68 people journey was slightly different, because obviously 14 months in we hit COVID, so not that I want to go into the detail of that, but so it was like we were acting as a startup the other side of it. But yeah, in answer to that question, I don't think that yet.
It certainly feels like you've made it to me. I follow a lot of your team members on LinkedIn, and when you were saying you hope that you think you've got a positive culture, they all seem really happy, and they're all like waxing lyrical about the business, and they share some really great stuff.
Yeah, they do, and that makes me very, very proud. I think that it's probably important to say that, and they will agree with this. Of course, any platform, any social media is just the positives. Of course, there are challenges. Of course, we cock things up, and of course, we make the wrong decision. And of course, we go, why the fuck do we do that? But you don't see that bit in a post.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
and I think as long as every mistake that you make, I've always had this attitude, even back from hospitality days, of seeing that a mistake as an opportunity to turn something around. I think in all the time that we've operated, the only clients that we've ever really fallen out with, if I'm honest, is ones that, when they haven't paid or they've done something crazy, and I still don't want to burn bridges, if I'm honest, but kind of looking back on everything and thinking, right, how do I make this into an opportunity? What was the learning from this? I was talking to one of the consultants today who's had some news after a very long process not go their way, and there's a reason why all that happened, and that's how we've got to kind of think about it. What have we learned from it, and what can we take from it?
Yeah, definitely. The question that I was going to ask earlier, and it'll be the last one, is can you talk us a little bit through the process that you go through with companies that you're helping to develop, like their purpose and their values and vision and all of that?
So it depends on the size of the business. So on the values side of things, usually that happens over multiple sessions. I'll just take one that we've done as an example. So we get the team within the business talking about values in general, what they mean to people, why they exist, doing a bit of research on maybe some other companies, and how, you know, one's coming to my head, for example, Patagonia, you kind of look at their values and you think, okay, I can see how this works, how this can be so powerful. So you've got to get people buying into that it's not just words on a wall, because they might have previously worked for an organization where it's just, you know, a word on the wall and that was it. And actually it didn't create the culture. And then we kind of get talking about the different behaviors that happen in the business, and, you know, what they think sounds like it's linking to a value. And then really it's kind of crafting sentences and words and, you know, putting things together. And so it's done over 2 or 3 sessions. The founders got to be, you know, kind of got to lead it really. We did one where the founder, by the end of it, didn't feel as though there was something missing about kind of energy and pace, and so we revisited it, and they wanted something more about it. It sounded a bit too, for want of a better word, fluffy, and they wanted something more electric in there. So we kind of went back and revisited them. So it's got to be kind of founder led, but yeah, it's done over 2 or 3 sessions, and it's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, the process astounds me. I really think I need to do that at some point.
I'll help you.
Oh, oh, thank you, Kath. I feel really inspired. Thanks both, especially what Abi said about London, as that always seems such a scary place to explore growth. Really relate to the feeling too northern, but in my case, feeling too Welsh.
Yeah, I definitely sound a bit posher, I think, when I go down there, but also I find if you're meeting the right people that and you kind of get to that sweet spot of not talking, you know, how you kind of conduct meetings. So basically not talking about your process, not trying to pitch, really not talking about, in my case, recruitment, actually just thinking of it as a nice conversation. And if they want to, you know, just feeling really relaxed about it, then you normally find that they've you peel off a few layers, and yeah, they've got a northern soul. A Welsh soul.
Cool, thank you for sharing that, Kathleen. Okay, well, if no one has any other questions, we will probably leave it there for today. I'll let you get back to your Friday afternoons. But next week we have Resh and Hina, who are co-founders of Chapati Club. Really can't wait for you to meet them. They are talking about adapting to change. So I'll be really excited for you to see those guys live. Same time next week for that one. And I think all that's left to say is just a massive thank you, Abi, for giving us your time this afternoon.
No, thank you. And I have to say, I'm going to give you a shout out, because the organisation that's gone into it, all the branding around it, it's beautiful, and yeah, very, very slick. So thank you very much for letting me be part of it. Thank
you, Abi. That means a lot, and everyone's donated their time to this, and it's just amazing. So thank you for being so generous, and I wish you loads and loads of luck in London and internationally and up north. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.